If the garlic you pulled out of the ground last summer was the size of a marble, that was not bad luck, and it was not your soil being cursed. It was one of about 10 things that happened months earlier, back on the day you planted. Here is what makes garlic different from almost everything else you grow. A tomato you can rescue. If it is struggling in June, you can feed it, stake it, water it, and still get a harvest. Garlic does not work that way. Garlic sits in the ground for 8 or 9 months, and almost every decision that determines the size of that bulb gets made in the first 10 minutes when you are on your knees pushing cloves into the dirt. Get those 10 minutes right, and you dig up bulbs so big they do not fit in your hand. Get them wrong, and you spend 9 months watering something that was never going to amount to anything. So today I am walking you through the 10 mistakes that shrink garlic bulbs in the order you would actually make them. I am in the hot south, zone 8B, so I am going to flag every place where our timing is different from what you read on the back of the seed packet, because most garlic advice online is written for people with real winters. Stick around for number 7 especially. That is the one that decides whether you get golf balls or marbles, and almost nobody talks about it. Mistake number 1, planting garlic from the grocery store. I understand the temptation completely. There is a bulb sitting in your kitchen, it costs $1, and seed garlic costs 15. But grocery store garlic is a gamble for 3 reasons. Most of it is sprayed with a sprout inhibitor, so it sits on the shelf without growing, which is the exact opposite of what you want. Most of it was grown a long way from you, in a climate that is nothing like yours, and a fair amount of it carries fungal disease that you are about to introduce into a bed you will be growing in for years. Buy real seed garlic once from a grower and label the variety. Then here is the part people miss. Save your own biggest bulbs every year and replant those. After 3 or 4 seasons, that garlic has adapted to your yard, your soil, and your weather, and it will outgrow anything you can buy. Mistake number 2, growing the wrong type for your climate. There are 2 families. Hardneck garlic sends up a stiff center stalk and gives you big, easy-to-peel cloves and incredible flavor. Softneck garlic is the braiding kind, the kind that stores the longest. Here is what matters. Hardneck needs a real cold period, roughly 6 to 8 weeks below 40 degrees, or the bulb never divides properly and you dig up one solid round instead of a bulb full of cloves. If you are in the deep south, softneck and Creole varieties are your reliable choice. If you have your heart set on hardneck down here, you can fake the cold by keeping the bulbs in the refrigerator for 6 to 8 weeks before planting. But know that you are working against the plant. Mistake number 3, planting too early because a calendar told you to. Almost every garlic guide says plant in September or October. That is genuinely good advice in Ohio. Down here in September, the soil is still holding summer heat, and garlic planted into warm soil does something you do not want. It puts up a big flush of green top growth in the fall. Then that top growth gets knocked back by the first cold snap, and the plant burns through stored energy it was supposed to spend on roots. What you actually want is roots without much top. In the hot south, that means late October into November. And honestly, Thanksgiving planting is fine. The rule that travels better than any date: plant about 3 to 4 weeks before your ground genuinely cools off for the season, not 3 to 4 weeks before the calendar says fall. Mistake number 4, breaking the bulbs apart way too early. This one is quiet and it costs people a lot. You get excited, you crack all your bulbs into cloves on Saturday, and then it rains, and you do not actually plant until the following weekend. In that week, the basal plate, the little scarred disc at the flat bottom of the clove, where every root is going to come from, dries out, and hardens. That clove will still grow. It will just start slower and finish smaller than the one you cracked the day you planted. So crack your bulbs within 24 to 48 hours of putting them in the ground, and leave the papery skin on each clove. Do not peel them. That wrapper is the clove's protection against rot all winter. Mistake number 5, planting the little cloves. Every bulb you crack open has a handful of big, fat outer cloves and a few skinny little ones tucked in the middle. And it feels wasteful to not plant all of them. But here is the rule that runs this entire crop. Clove size in, bulb size out. A big clove has more stored energy, builds a bigger root system faster, and gives you a bigger bulb. A skinny middle clove gives you a skinny little bulb 9 months later in the exact same amount of bed space. So sort them. Plant the biggest cloves and put the little ones in the kitchen, or plant them thickly in a corner and cut them as garlic greens in the spring. They are wonderful in eggs. Just do not let them take up prime real estate in your bed. Mistake number 6, planting upside down, too shallow, or too close. Pointy end up, flat end down, every single time. A clove planted upside down will usually still find its way to the surface, but it wastes weeks doing it, and it often comes up bent and undersized. Depth: about 2 inches deep here in the mild south, and 3 to 4 inches where the ground actually freezes. The extra depth is winter insulation you do not need down here, and burying too deep in warm, wet soil invites rot instead. Spacing: 6 inches between cloves, about a foot between rows. I know 6 inches looks absurdly generous when you are staring at a bare bed in November. Crowd them, and every one of those plants competes for the same water and nitrogen at the exact moment it is trying to swell a bulb. Mistake number 7, the one I told you to stick around for: planting into soil that is not ready. Garlic is one of the hungriest crops in your garden, and it is a genuinely weak digger. Those roots are fine and shallow. They do not muscle through compacted clay the way a tomato root will. When garlic hits hard ground, it simply stops expanding, and a bulb that cannot expand outward stays small, no matter how perfect everything else was. So before a single clove goes in, do 3 things. Loosen the bed at least 8 to 10 inches down, a broad fork or a digging fork, no tilling required. Work in 2 to 3 inches of finished compost because garlic will use every bit of it over 9 months. And check your pH. Garlic wants roughly 6.0 to 7.0, and if you are running acidic, a little garden lime worked in now has all winter to do its job. And if you are anywhere along the Gulf Coast, hear me on drainage. Our winters are not cold, they are wet. Garlic sitting in soggy ground for weeks does not freeze, it rots, quietly, and you find out in March when the leaves go yellow and mushy at the base. Raised beds are not decorative here, they are the whole ball game. Mistake number 8, mulching wrong. And yes, there is a wrong way. Mulch is not optional with garlic. It holds moisture through dry winter spells. It moderates the wild temperature swings we get down here, where it is 80 degrees on Tuesday and 28 on Thursday. And most importantly, it is your entire weed strategy for the next 6 months. But there are 2 ways to get it wrong. The first is not enough. A thin scatter of leaves does nothing, and weeds come right through it. The second is the one southern gardeners fall into, piling on the 6 to 8 inches of straw that northern gardeners use, which is winter insulation they need, and we do not. In our wet, mild winter, that much mulch stays soaked and holds cold damp right against the developing bulb. 3 to 4 inches of clean straw is the sweet spot down here. Straw, not hay. Hay is full of seed, and you will be weeding it out until June. Shredded leaves work beautifully too, and they are free. And if you run them over with a mower first, they knit together instead of blowing off the bed. And pull the mulch back slightly from the shoots in early spring, so air can move around the base of each plant. Mistake number 9, getting the spring feeding and watering backwards. Here is the shape of the garlic year. From planting until late winter, the plant is building roots and leaves. Then, in spring, it flips and starts pouring everything into the bulb. Your job is to feed the first half hard and back off in the second. In late winter, when you see fresh green growth take off, that is your window for nitrogen. Blood meal, fish emulsion, a good compost tea, whatever you use. Every leaf that plant grows becomes a wrapper layer on the finished bulb, so leaves early equals size later. But once bulbing starts, and that is triggered by day length, so for us it is around mid-April, stop the nitrogen completely. Keep feeding past that point, and you get a magnificent leafy plant sitting on top of a disappointing bulb. Water is the same story in reverse. About an inch a week while it is actively growing, and remember that a mulched bed holds moisture far longer than a bare one, so check under the straw before you reach for the hose. Then, 2 weeks before you harvest, stop watering entirely. Let the ground dry. Garlic pulled from wet soil bruises, stains, and will not cure properly, and a bulb that does not cure properly will not store. Mistake number 10, harvesting and curing by guesswork. 2 things here. First, if you grew hardneck, it will send up a curling flower stalk in late spring. That is the scape. Cut it once it makes a full curl. The plant is trying to make seed, and every day you leave it up is energy not going into the bulb. Cutting scapes can add a real, visible amount of size, and they are delicious, so this is free food. Second, harvest timing. Do not wait until the plant is dead. That is the single most common way people ruin a genuinely good crop. Every green leaf still standing is an intact wrapper around your bulb. Once too many leaves brown off, the wrappers rot away and the bulb splits open in the ground, and split garlic will not store more than a few weeks. Pull when about 3 to 4 of the lower leaves have gone brown and roughly half are still green. Loosen with a fork first, never yank by the stem, then cure. Do not wash them, do not lay them out in the sun. Brush off the loose dirt, leave the tops and roots on, and hang or rack them somewhere shaded with real air movement for 2 to 3 weeks. A garage with a box fan running is perfect. You will know they are done when the neck is dry all the way through and the outer wrappers rustle like paper. And one last thing, because this is where people undo 3 weeks of good curing. Do not store your garlic in the refrigerator. Cold storage tells the bulb it is winter, and it starts sprouting. A basket on the counter, somewhere dark and dry and room temperature, and you will still be cooking with your own garlic next February. So let us put the whole thing back together, because when you see them in a row, you realize this is not 10 difficult things. It is one afternoon, done carefully. Start with real seed garlic, in a type that suits your winter. Plant when your ground actually cools, not when the calendar says so. Crack your bulbs the day you plant. Use only the biggest cloves, pointy end up, 2 inches deep, 6 inches apart. Put them into loose, composted, well-drained soil. That is number 7, and it is the one that most often separates a marble from a monster. Mulch 3 to 4 inches. Feed hard in late winter. Stop at bulbing. and dry the bed out before you harvest. Cut your scapes, pull while the leaves are still half green, and cure in the shade. That is it. That is the whole crop. 9 months of the easiest gardening you will ever do, decided in one careful afternoon this fall. And if you only take one thing from all of this, take this. Plant the biggest cloves you have into the loosest soil you can make at the right time for your climate. Those 3 decisions do most of the work. Everything else on this list is just protecting the head start you gave yourself on planting day. If this was useful, subscribe. I put out practical organic gardening for real backyards every week, and there is a whole winter of cool season growing coming up that I do not want you to miss. And tell me in the comments what you are planting this fall. I read every one of them. Happy gardening!